Okay. So you have created a user and you gave the user ID and password to the user, and they were able to log in and everything worked fine. Now the user says like, oh, I wanted to access few of the objects in one of the application schemas, and I'm not able to access that one. So he comes back to you and he says that I am not able to access that. So then you find out, you ask him, okay, what are the objects, what are the table names you want to access? And a DBA does something which is called as granting privileges. What is a privilege? Again, in simple English terms, it is giving some extra rights to the user. So in Oracle database, there are two kinds of privileges. One is a system privilege, other one is a object privilege. A system privilege is basically it gives the user the rights to perform actions like create a table, create an index, even connect to a database. Now see, it is not letting me connect to the database. So this privilege where it lets to connect to the instance is what is missing for that user which we created. So once we give that privilege, then you will see the connection should go fine, provided there are nothing else which is missing at that point of time, right? So a system privilege is required for the user to connect. Then we have the object privileges. Object privileges is whether it's basically if a user wants a access to a particular table or a index is the uh, object privilege. So object privilege basically gives you the access to read the tables of a different user, or use the tables of a different user, use the index of a different user. Okay. Or to change the data into a table, right? You, if a table is created under specific user, like under Dave user, if a table 1 is created, Dave will have access to table 1. He can read, write, do anything. But if Dave wants access to table X, then a object privilege needs to be given where Dave will get the privilege to read table X, update table X, or use view Z, use the index Y. Okay, so that is what is the privilege, giving extra rights to a user. So there are hundreds of system privileges available in the database. Okay, and how do we grant a privilege? Will be a statement like this: grant privilege. Uh, there is a privilege called as create session to username to whom you want to create, to user Dave which we created. There is something called as a with admin option which will come to it in few minutes. For now, we'll just give this grant create privilege to user Dave. So this we are connected as a sysdba over here, and privilege. Okay, wait, what is create session only, right? Yeah. This privilege word should not come. Grant create session to Dave. So now Dave got a privilege called as create session. So user Dave should be able to make a connection now. Let's try this. Okay. Until this connects, again, I think there is something else stopping it. Wait, what was the password? Oh, I'm trying a wrong password. It was Falcon 1 2, right? Oh, no, Dave. Oracle 1 2 only. We use this one. Okay, let it connect. Let it connect. We'll come back. Okay, so privileges, right? So in privileges, extra rights given to the user, right? So you can grant multiple privileges to this user. These are few of the privileges which are available on a database by default, like a create session privilege. Create session will basically allow the user to connect to the database, and create table, it allows the user to create a table in its own schema. Create a view, create synonym, all these privileges we need to give, right? There is an option which is called as a with admin option. So with admin option, what happens is, say I create user Dave. Dave was the first DBA joining the company. Okay, so there was a senior DBA, and he created account for Dave. Okay, so senior DBA created account for Dave, and Dave was the first DBA who joined the company. Now company became bigger. Now another 10 DBAs joined. Let's say 100 DBAs joined. Okay, another 100 DBAs joined the company. Now the senior DBA will not sit and create the accounts for 100 DBAs. He'll say, I have other important works. So we have Dave, who is also a DBA. Let he create the account. So while creating that account of Dave, right, if he gave a privilege, like create user privilege here, if he give a create user privilege, then with the admin option, then what will happen is Dave will be able to create those hundreds of DBA accounts and grant them the privileges which was given by his senior. Okay, if senior does not give that with admin option privilege, then uh, they will not be able to grant those privileges to the other 100 DBAs. So with admin option means the user who is getting that privilege with admin option will have privilege to grant same privileges to other user, right? So it's basically giving control to some other giving control to a subordinate user to do all the tasks what the senior was doing so far, right? Transferring of the power to somebody else. Okay, so now the senior DBA created user Dave, and he gave that privilege with admin option, and Dave created hundreds of DBAs. And after hundreds of DBAs joined, there were 10 more DBAs who joined, or yeah, 10 more DBAs who joined. Now Dave is also busy now. He has a lot of work to do. So he says, okay, you guys have that admin privilege. He will choose one person out of this 100, and he'll say, one person, can you create those 10 DBAs? Now one person also has an admin option, right? Because he got the grants, and he creates this 10 DBAs. Okay. Now, say for example, this DBA1 decided to leave the company. Okay. So this guy is gone. Now this guy, once this guy is gone, they will delete that user account from the database. They will not keep it in the database because he is no more in the company. There's no point of keeping that user account in the database. So they will get rid of that user one from the database. Now when deleting the user one, what all this user one did, he created different users, he created different objects, all those will stay. So this is a dangerous part of the admin option. So even though we are deleting this user, it is not deleting all the things which that user did with that admin option. It is just leaving everything in place, just that one user is gone. Now, if this user had created some object for some testing purpose in the database, and that was like probably 100 GB of size, then that object still stays. He did it for his testing. Only that person knows why that object was created. Now that object still exists in the database, and has years passed by, that object stays there, occupying 100 GB of space for no reason, and the other remaining 99 dBs, they don't know what is that object for. Eventually, you might end up in a situation where there is an issue and you don't know what that object is for, and you start checking everything. So giving an admin option is kind of very tricky. So you do it only when you know that person is going to stay there forever in that company. Nobody stays forever in a company. So if that person is going to stay for a longer time dedicated for the company, then you can give that admin option while creating the user for that user. Okay. Is that clear or you got confused?
Yeah, a little bit.
Hmm. Okay. Let's say user ABC. Okay. So these are users and what they created. User ABC created um 10 tables and one user. Okay. Then XYZ user joined. Okay. Now XYZ user also created 10 tables and one user. Okay. But this XYZ user did not have a privilege to. Okay, let's do one thing. Okay, ABC created 10 tables, one user, and now XYZ user joined the company. Now XYZ user was created without a privilege to create a table. Okay, now he goes and says the ABC guy that I don't have privilege to create a table. Can you give me privilege? So ABC will think, oh, this privilege is an important privilege, and that might be required by this person, and in the future he might have to give it to others also. So what ABC will do is ABC will grant create table with admin option. So now what is happening, ABC give grant create table with admin option to XYZ. So with this grant with admin option, what happens is XYZ also becomes equivalent to ABC user, and XYZ can grant that create table option to anybody else. Now say there was another uh, junior DBA who joined MNO. Okay, now this guy said XYZ that I want to create a table and it is not letting me to create a table. Okay, so XYZ also knows like, okay, there needs to be create table privilege. Now XYZ does not want to give with admin option, he just gives like grant create table. Okay, so MNO has grant create table only, XYZ has with the admin option. XYZ is same to ABC in terms of this privilege, grant create table privilege. Now XYZ decided to quit the company, he's gone, and ABC does not know that XYZ had given that create table to MNO user. Now MNO user did not quit the company, he just changed the department. He was in DBA department, he decided to go into development. Okay, change the department to development. Now XYZ guy is gone. What he did, we don't know. ABC guy is there and MNO has that privilege. Now, assuming MNO is a guy who wants to, who likes to try multiple things, and he knows that there's a create table privilege for him. So MNO goes and creates 1,000 tables to do some testing for his development activities. Okay, now 1,000 tables with say 1 GB each table, he's using like how much? 1,000 GB of space. Okay, 1,000 GB of space is a lot. Now ABC is the only DB who is handling the database. Now ABC comes and think like, what is happening? Who is creating the tables? Because I did not give any user to create a table privilege. And who is creating the table? right? Since XYZ is gone and we deleted the XYZ account, and since XYZ had given that create table, ABC does not know, and MNO does not lose that privilege because XYZ gave it with the admin option. He had admin option. So XYZ having an admin option is the trouble over here. If ABC had not decided to give XYZ with admin option, then XYZ would have gone back to ABC, or MNO would have gone back to ABC and told ABC that I want create table privilege. Then ABC would have known that okay, this MNO also has a create table privilege. Since he gave the admin option, whatever XYZ does is unknown to ABC user. Okay, it kind of creates a, a wall between what all was done by XYZ user and ABC, the senior DBA, does not know what all happened. So he has to drill back and see who is creating these tables and try to find out how this guy got a privilege. And also there might be audit also, and they can come back and say, why is this developer having a create table privilege on the database, production database, right? Developer should not be having create privileges on the production database. Whatever happens from the application. So that is the idea behind the admin option. Whatever privilege you give to the other user, whatever privilege ABC gave to XYZ with admin user means with admin option means XYZ can grant the same privilege to other users. But demerit of that one is when you delete that, uh, when that user is removed, the granted privileges do not get revoked. It stays. Is that clear now?
Yes.
So that is,
So,
yeah.
so they recommend like not to give that
Yeah,
like
not to give the admin option. I'm just teaching you what all options are there, right? But generally,
mm,
nobody gives with the admin option. There might be a necessity like, okay, this ABC guy is very busy, or ABC guy is quitting the company and he wants XYZ to take over everything. So he just gives all the privileges with admin option to XYZ.
okay.
That would be a good scenario. But the scenario which we took was XYZ is quitting. So whatever
Mm,
XYZ had and done, that would be not visible to ABC. Okay. So these are privilege. And like you give the system privileges, you can revoke the privilege also. The syntax for that one is revoke the privilege name. What are the privilege name? These are a few of the privileges: create session, create table. Revoke create session from user, whichever user want. You can revoke multiple privileges. Say you have given 10 privileges, you can list all those privileges, revoke create session, comma, create table, comma, create view from username ABC XYZ MNO list of users. So you can create one revoke statement and clean off all the privileges of all the users. Okay, but this command has to be run as a sys user. You cannot run it as any other user. So that is the admin option which I told you. Where can you get the list of privileges from? These are the two views: dba underscore sys underscore privs and user underscore sys underscore privs. Okay, so these two tables you will not really use day to day. It would be only when you are trying to create users, or somebody is complaining you that whatever they raised a request for that is not working. Then you go into this views and check if those privileges exist or not. Okay, so those are the system privileges. Any questions on that system privileges before we go to object privileges?
no.
Okay, so system privileges gave us the power to create a table, create a view, all those things, right? Now object privileges, basically what it allows is it allows the user to manipulate the data in the database. Like you want to update a table or insert some entries into a table, then those privileges are called as a object privileges. Those privileges are specific to objects. When I say objects, table, indexes, views, materialized views, packages, procedures, all these are objects in a database. So if somebody wants to do a specific task on objects, then you have to think of object privileges. But if somebody wants to create something, like create an object, then it is a system privilege. Okay, so how do we grant object privilege? Again, this is the syntax. This grant privilege, what is the privilege name you want to give, or all the privileges you want to give, on which object you want to give it, basically. Let me see if there is an example here. Yeah, so these are the privileges, like select, insert. So my statement will be something like grant select on table 1 to, no, let's say table X, right? So we are trying to do this scenario, right? Username Dave has table 1, owns table 1 and index 1. User ABC owns table X, Z, view Z and index Y. So I'm trying to give an object privilege to user Dave to table X. So what I will do is grant select on table X to Dave. Okay, simple grant select on table X to Dave. So once I run this grant, Dave will be able to read the table X. Okay, but they will not be able to insert anything into this table X. So if you want to give Dave the permission, then another grant would be grant insert on table X to Dave, that grant. Okay, so that is how you grant the privileges. Now, like in system privileges, we had the admin option. In object privileges, we have the grant option. Same concept, just that admin option was for just the system privileges for creating objects, etc. This grant option is for the objects, uh, object privilege. So basically, in the same concept, if we put it, if ABC gave some privilege with grant option, okay, if ABC gave some privilege with grant option to XYZ, and XYZ granted the same option to MNO, and XYZ quit the company, ABC will not know what all grant privileges MNO was given. MNO might be inserting some entries in the table. He decided to uh, do something bad for the company, and he started inserting fake entries into some tables, right? So you would have heard many types of scams happening, like somebody faked passes to some say passes to some parks and everything. So probably somebody inserted an entry in that table which had that registered users for the parks, and they put their name, and they were able to get into the parks easily, right? So MNO decided to do something like that and try to insert his name into a table, and ABC does not know that one. ABC thinks, okay, I am the only one. XYZ was there, now he's gone, so I'm the only one, so nobody can mess up with that table. But there is somebody in the company who already has the privileges which nobody knows of, and that user can do anything to the table, right? So same way, when given by grant option and user is who gave that grant is out of the company, the grants stay with MNO. Okay, so these are a few of the object privileges which are generally used. Again, like we can revoke the system privileges, we can revoke the object privilege also. Syntax, revoke what privilege you want to revoke what privilege on what object from which user. Okay, in the object privileges there is a option to um, roll back this behavior. Which one we said? The grant option. If you drop the uh, if you revoke the privileges, say if you revoke the privilege from user XYZ by mentioning this cascade constraints option while revoking, then what all privileges XYZ gave, that will be revoked also. So MNO will lose the privileges which XYZ gave. But now this is only for object privileges, not for system privileges. For system privileges, we don't have that option. For object privileges, we have that option of revoking the child grants also, which was provided by any user. So always when you are revoking any object privileges, use this cascade constraint. So it will basically get rid of all the privileges which were cascaded or which were continued upon. Again, to get a list of object privileges which have been provided, all these views will be used. So basically, user table privileges made, table privileges received. Which all user gave the privileges, and which all users received the table privileges. These are all the users in the database who made the privileges, all the users in the table space in the database who received the privileges. Users um, who received column privileges. You can give a privilege at the column level also, not only at table level. Say for example, there is a employee table in uh, which has employee name, last name, and address. Okay, so you can just give the privilege so that anybody can update the address. Employee can move from one house to another house and their address might need to be updated, but employee name changing is very rare. So you can restrict that access just to a column also. That's what I mean to say. Okay. Okay, are we clear with the system privileges and object privileges? Mukta, you're on mute. Are we clear on the privileges part?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, as we proceed further, it gets a little bit complexing. That's why I want to make sure that at least you are clear until this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, so far we saw system privileges, object privileges. Now to view system privileges, grant create session to Dave, object privileges can select on table X to Dave, like this. Now, say there is a repetitive behavior in a company, like every time a new user joins, we give a specific amount of system privileges, specific amount of object privileges. Say we give 10 system privileges and 20 object privileges. For example, if somebody, a new person in application team joins and they need access to the database, so we create an account, we grant system privileges, we grant object privileges so that they can do their work. Now it's kind of a repetitive behavior. People join in teams, they leave the company, new person joins, they leave, all the things keeps on happening. It's a cycle. Now every time this happens, you don't want to always pull up what privileges I gave to the last user, what object privileges I gave last user. You don't have a list. You have to again go and query all these tables which were mentioned here and try to get that information. So instead, to make our lives easy, what we can do is we can create something called as a role. So what is a role? A role is a again a container that holds the privilege. So what you will do is you'll create a role. How do we create a role? Simple. Create role, role name. You can give a password to that one. That's it. As simple as. that. Create role name say app user role. Okay, this is for a application user. This is for application user, and you can either give the password or cannot, don't give the password. Not identified by password. Remove this. Okay, so if I create this role, a role will be created. This would be same as a user account in the database, and you can assign all those privileges to this role. So I created that role and assigned all the privileges to role. Now whenever a new person joins, all you have to do is assign this role, app user underscore role, to that user while creating the user. How do we assign the role? Grant role to user. All right, so if application user called Frank joined, so what I will do is I'll create the user, create user Frank with all the details, and I'll say grant role app user underscore role to Frank. So if I do this much, Frank will get all these privileges: 10 system privilege, 20 object privileges. And since you have named it in a correct way, like app user role, you know that once you see that role, okay, application user should has to get this role. You can assign that role directly to the application user, right? So that will make our job easier. Instead of remembering all the system privileges, object privileges, you just create a role, grant that role to the user. Again, while granting the role, again you have the same concept with admin option. Same thing, this concept which I explained you with admin option. So if you give user, if user ABC gives that role to XYZ with grant option, sorry, with admin option, then XYZ can give it to any other user. But when XYZ is gone, the other users will still have that roles. You can revoke a role, revoke role name from username. And if you don't want that role to be existing, you want to drop a role, you can drop a role also using drop role and the role name. You can enable and disable a role also. For that, you will have to use a procedure which is called db session set role. Okay, so that is about the roles. Are we clear about the roles?
Yes.
Okay, so another last topic for user management is called as a profile. Now you created a user, you gave it privileges, or you created a role and gave that role of privileges and assigned the role to that user. All done. User is able to log in, user is able to access the tables, update the tables, he's happy. Now this user created a password. Okay, how will you ensure that the password is um, not compromised, right? Or if the password is compromised also, how can you enforce that a user will change the password frequently, like after 60 days? Few of the places, they enforce to change the password of the account. How is that done? So at the database level, there is something called as a profile. So what is a profile? It's again an Oracle object. So it helps you to assign password management and resource limits. For example, you can set a limit like how much a user can use the um, CPU, how many sessions can a user make to the database. So all these are the resource limits which can be part of the profile: CPU per session, CPU per call, how many sessions a user can do, maximum sessions, how much of idle time, for how much time the user connection can stay idle. Okay, how much SGA can that particular user use? So all those kind of limits can be set. How do we create a profile? This is how we create a profile. So create profile, give a name for the profile and all the limits you want to add it. So now again, if you are joining already existing database team, then you might not really work on this creating of profiles. It will already be there. Okay. If you are the first one joining and you have to build up the team, then you will come up with all this information. So basically, you don't need to give all these values, just select whichever is required for you. Okay. So you can create the profiles, alter the profiles, and even drop the profiles. You can change the profile of a user, alter user. Here the username is John. Change the profile to DBA profile. By default, a DBA profile will be created, which will give you the all the privileges DBA account will have. Okay, so that is how we do the assign the profiles. So these are a few of the values which will be assigned to the profile. By default, there will be a profile in your database which is called as a default profile, which will have some values to all this limitations. We can use that one also whenever you create a user. If you want anything specific, then you create your own profile. Any questions on this one?
No. No.
Okay. Okay. All right. This session is ending. So I know the user creation was still pending. So I'll figure out what exactly is happening here and I'll
Okay.
show you in the next class. Okay. How to
Yeah.
create a
Okay.
user and other
Okay.
things. Yeah.
Okay.